Welcome and thank you for joining another one of our online workshops where we all huddle together and specifically engage in deeper learning around a topic with an amazing specialist. So I'm excited to see everyone engaging together. As always, I love to just share a little bit about 54 as we go into the conversation. Because we are very excited about it and really passionate about what it can be for you as leaders. So I'll always take the opportunity to share a little bit. So in case you're not familiar yet, what does 54 do? Our heart and our passion and our mission is to guide nonprofits or ministry leaders on your learning journey. So finding the right step at the right learning and the right next step at the right time towards growing your organization and reaching your full potential. And we do that in a few ways. So one that you will be very familiar with is our online courses. So we've got content structured according to our 9 dimensions. So you can go do a bunch of really good courses there. And then also our online events like this one, where we all engage in different ways with a topic specialist and go into deeper learning. So I'm really excited and grateful that you're all here and hope that it will be a valuable and fruitful session for you all. Today's conversation specifically is in the dimension of funding, as you'll know, and the related topics, if you want to go learn more on the platform, is strategies for fundraising and tools for fundraising. So everything that Scott discusses today is represented in those courses, but he is going to go a little bit deeper today. And of course, the opportunity to ask other leaders how they're finding it and to engage is what really makes this a deeper learning session. But those are the topics where you can find the courses that relates to today's conversation. Great. And then I'm very, very excited to introduce Scott. He is, I'll actually just take this down so that you can see both of us. So Scott is from North Carolina. He lives in Raleigh. He graduated from North Carolina State University and then went all the way west to get his master's in organizational leadership. So he is well trained, but even more so and even more importantly, Scott is really passionate to walk alongside leaders. He loves to see other leaders thrive and grow and be the best that they can be. He's walked the hard road. He's been in the trenches when it comes to fundraising. He's smelled and tasted and seen the pain and what it takes, and he really understands the struggle. So today's conversation comes from his learning and his experiences that he's excited to share with you, and hopefully we'll open up a conversation so that we can all learn together. And Scott, it's amazing to have you here. I've really enjoyed all the prep sessions to see your heart and passion for leaders and to see leaders thrive and to really know this goal that you've had in your hand through your experience could really serve other leaders and therefore that you want to share it. So this is a wonderful and blessed opportunity. And thank you for your time and for being here.
Well, it's so fun to be here, Nina. Thanks to you and the team that have done so much to help me and other organizations around the world. I'm looking at the chat and it's fun to see that I have a couple of friends that I know that are here. So hello, Adel. Well, this is great. I just in getting started, one of the things that I'll share is that I think the most entrepreneurial part of what you and I do every day is not really delivering the wonderful things that our organization does. The outcomes are fantastic, and whatever your cause is doing for the kingdom of God in the world is wonderful as well. But I think the most entrepreneurial thing that you'll engage in is trying to figure out how to get donors to really care and engage in your organization. And that's kind of what we're going to tackle today. And with fundraising, there's a problem with fundraising in that there's just an infinite number of ways to do it. I always say that fundraising isn't like a recipe that you get from your grandmother that has a very specific way to bake the cake. It's kind of the opposite of that. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of ways you could be successful in fundraising. And so if you've gone through the course, or even with my time today, one of the things that you might notice is we're spending a lot of time thinking about values and principles in fundraising more than the specifics, because there's so many dynamic things that you have to take in account for when you're fundraising, that it's hard to say this is the right way for you to do it. But we're going to try to tackle a couple of things today that I think can kind of help you get in the mindset to take your organization to the next level. And we're going to look at 4 things to improve your fundraising. So you can let me know if these are actually practical, where you go, okay, at the end of this session, you would say, okay, I could actually execute on a couple of the things that were shared today. And we'll see. You let me know, because I would love for this to be a conversation rather than just me speaking at you, although I'll be doing that for a little bit. But I'm so glad to be with you today. And if it's okay, I would just like to say a quick prayer as we get started here. I want to pray a blessing on your organization. So, Father, we just pause for a second to ask for your Holy Spirit to guide our hearts as we think about this topic. I want to pray, Father, that you would help encourage us, that you are the creator of all things, and you provide us with the resources that we need. And I want to pray, Father, that you would just encourage each and every person here that you are in charge. You do have us in mind. And I pray that you would allow your Holy Spirit to speak to us as we think about something that creates anxiety and is difficult. Sometimes we're just scratching our head on how to do this. I just pray, Father, that you would encourage us and speak to us as we have this time today. And we pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. All right. Well, as we get started, I want to hit tip number 1. I think everybody probably knows what a profit and loss statements is, and we're gonna tackle, what does this mean? This tip number 1. I love, if you haven't, one of my recommendations for a book is reading Henry Nouwen's book. Actually, let me show it to you. Hang on. So I don't know if you can see this. A Spirituality of Fundraising by Henry Nouwen. Wonderful little book. Encourage you to get it. It's one of my favorites. There's another book called Asking by Gerald Panis. That's another great book. But Henry Nouwen has a quote here on our first slide, and it's community is one of the greatest gifts charitable organizations have to give. Fundraising must always aim to create new and lasting friendships. I love this. I love this idea, which is, and this is a weird idea, but what does your organization have to give to donors? We always think of, like, we've got to go and find people that can give to us. So it's sort of counterintuitive to think that we have a gift that we would give. But there's a lot of people out there that are looking for community, and they're looking for ways that they could participate in the kingdom of God. They're looking for ways that they could invest their resources. They're looking for significance. What is the gift that we would have to give? Well, I want to try to illustrate that a little bit with this idea of what is the true profit and loss statement for a nonprofit. And I'm going to explain what a profit and loss statement is, but the true profit and loss of a nonprofit isn't just the income and expenses. It's the ability we have to generate more relationships than we lose. And so in a way, fundraising is mathematical. in that we need to create a community that's adequate to support what we're doing. And so that's what we're going to dive into here. So if we move ahead and we just dive in a little bit more to this idea of profit and loss statement. So for those of you that have been in business, you definitely will know what a profit and loss statement is. But when you show your financials, you normally there's more, but typically a financial report would have a income statement, a balance sheet, and it would have a profit and loss statement. And so a profit and loss statement is a document that just compares your total income against your debt and expenses. And it helps board members, it helps people that would be looking at what you're doing. And in a company, a profit and loss statement communicates a lot of things really quickly. In a nonprofit, this is where I'm trying to use this as a thought provoker for you. In a nonprofit, I really think the true profit and loss statement, even though we would never create a document like this, would be able to say, this month we met 100 new people, and we had 5 people that we know are kind of moving on. They're no longer really supporting us or interested. They're moving on to something else. So we had a profit and loss of 95 new relationships. Now you can't really do that, but this is the idea that I'm trying to create, which is fundraising isn't so much trying to find like the rich people in your community so that they'll give to you. It's more about who am I really, who is our organization really pulling into a community in a way that is life-giving to them, helping them, and as a result, they're supporting what we're doing. And I'm going to share a couple of ideas and a couple of case studies, but we have a couple of questions here just to provoke some thought as I talk about this. What are 5 or 10 ways that your organization is earning friendship and trust of people? And another way to ask this would be, how can we meet 50, 100, 1,000 new people this year? What is it that you're doing that's generating new relationships? And then secondly, what are people already learning about your organization? And do you have the eyes to see and identify what is working? Like, have you ever asked the question, like, I wonder how that person got interested in what we are? Oh, they read this book, they heard about us in the book, that brought them to us, and we had a really good way to bring them in and invite them to a meeting that we had. Are you observing what actually is bringing new people to your organization? And then can you improve on that? Can you create variations? Can you come up with new ideas on that? It's kind of weird to think about that as fundraising, but in my mind, that's the key thing is what is it that I'm doing and our organization does that truly connects with people? And this is really counter to the whole idea. It's counter to the whole idea that we're helping people that really, really need help. And therefore, if I could just share with people how badly the need is in our community, then they will be moved to give. Now, you want to still do all of that, but it's different to be in the mindset of, I need to create a community, a way to bring people in, a way to minister to donors and friends in a way that activates them to care about the cause, and then giving will be a secondary benefit of that. Some ways that I've seen people giving, some ways that I've seen people bringing new people to them is they could have weekly meetings, monthly meetings, or quarterly meetings. I know an organization here in town, in my city, that doesn't really have any ministry at all in our city. It's all international ministry. And yet they have Thursday, 5 o'clock after work meeting. And I think it's actually, this is a, you know, I think it's actually at a restaurant in town. People get tea or beer, and they spend 15 minutes with a small devotional idea, and then they share something that's happening around the world in their work. And then 45 minutes to an hour and a half is just social, and they're meeting tons of people this way. And people are getting inspired not just by the cause, but also through the fellowship, by seeing their peers being involved. I know another organization that I asked the other day. I was like, what is the chief way that people are learning about your organization? And they said, well, we had somebody that wrote a book and they put us in the book, and people are reading that, and then they reach out to us. And once they reach, we realized that a lot of people were coming to us that way. So we started to schedule online video meetings, and that was giving us a great opportunity to meet people. And then as we ministered to them, they learned more about what we're doing. And then we were able to activate them as either givers, prayers, volunteers. And they sort of created this channel out of this book that was written with them in it. So it's really key to be looking at the ways that people are drawn to your organization. And if your conclusion is, wow, no one is being drawn to my organization, it's just my mom and my sister that are giving, then that's the entrepreneurial work that's ahead of us. So this chart here is called a giving chart, and I have well, you know what? We have a WhatsApp. There's a way to get on WhatsApp after this, and we can communicate with one another and ask questions. What I'll do is I will put a link to a website on WhatsApp if everybody joins that. But there's a site where you can plug in a number that you want to raise, and it will give you a chart like this. And I like these charts not because this is the holy grail of how you should be thinking mathematically about your fundraising, but it gives you an idea of what you're up against when you raise money. And so the first case study that I have here is a chart, and there's a relationship. So I'm helping a friend raise $3 million. And as we're coaching, he shared with me that he's got a goal to raise $3 million to build a camp. And he wants to raise, well, he needs to raise $3 million this year. It's actually an $8 million project. And so we got into the details of it. And the goal this year was to raise $3 million. So I said, okay, well, let's talk about how many relationships you have and what you think the capacity of those relationships are. And he gave me a list. I say on this slide 87 relationships. It's actually less. I think I actually counted since I put this slide together, and it's more like 56. So he gave me a list of 56 relationships. And then I showed him this chart. Now, this is a little bit of an eye chart more than a fundraising chart, but if you can see it, what you can see here is if you wanted to raise $3 million, most people are going to need a champion that can give $750,000. And then in order to raise $750,000, you probably need to have 3, 4, 5 possibilities out there of people that you would approach and go talk to. And then in addition to that, you need 5 that could potentially give 450,000 and 10 that could give 300,000 and so on. And so I was trying to convince my friend. I said, the problem with having 56 relationships is you just don't have enough relationships. And it's not an issue of I don't want to diminish what God could do, because he can always come in and create a miracle where you just raise 300, you raise $3 million in one ask. But you know, planning to have miracles is not really a strategic move. Our job is to be strategic and to work hard. And so if God provides a miracle, that's wonderful. So I'm not trying to diminish God's miracle with my friend, but I'm saying our work is to get your donors from 56, 57 to 500 or 1,000. We've got to grow your donor base. And we talked about that quite a bit, and he said, well, I don't think, if I look at this chart, I don't think I'm going to have one person give $750,000. I'm going to have more people giving $5,000 to $2,000. And I said, well, you're making my point for me, friend. You instead of 245 people that this chart would say is a good giving kind of strategy, what you're saying is it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 times that. So you might need 2,000 people in order to raise $3 million. So he is now convinced that the main work ahead of us is not learning how to ask his 56 people for money. The main job is trying to figure out how to grow his 56 people to 500 people. And that's where a lot of entrepreneurial needs come into place. And I didn't want to just pick on my friend. I'm going to pick on myself a little bit. I'm going to show you another chart here. This is my goal. So I am just like you. I run a foundation that has to raise money. So we sponsor students going to college and working with ministries all over the world. And I had a great year last year. My goal was to raise $600,000 over 2 years. So $300,000 last year and $300,000 this year. And I finished last year with $710,000. And it was only because there was this special, there were 2 special donors that came in and sort of blew me away. And so I reset my schedule this year. And so we already reached our goal. So I made a new goal, which is, let's see if we can raise another $200,000. Well, see, last year when I was raising money, I was raising it from people I already knew, and I reached out to all of those, and we met our goal. And so if I'm going to raise $200,000 this year, I have to raise it from people that I don't even know yet. I'll raise some of this from people that gave last year, but my challenge to myself is, okay, let's increase the amount of donors that our organization has, and that's what's ahead of me. And so you can see I've got to find some ways to get in front of at least 245 people that are giving at this level, and we'll see if I can do that. But I think I have some good ideas for meeting new people. Okay, so we'll have some time in the questions and answers. I'm hoping that is connecting in a way that makes some sense, because I actually think this, if I had one, if this course wasn't 4 things that could help you immediately, I think it would be, if it was one thing that could help you immediately, it would be that we're really identifying the ways that we are generating relationships. We're meeting new people. That might be the biggest thing that helps your organization. Imagine if you were able to create 500 to 1,000 new relationships this year, or 100 or 50, whatever it is, but more than you're generating now. I really hurt a lot of times for people, and I'll share my own example. I worked for an organization. It was a global medical organization for 8 years, and they've been around for almost 75 years, and when I was working for them as their development director, every year they had one year where somebody gave them a $10 million donation. And so they had one year where it was like, this is never going to get broken. But my first year that I was there, I was able to create I was able to be a part of. I mean, it was a whole team effort, but I was able to be a part of raising the most amount of money they'd ever raised, except for that one year. So we came in number 2 in their history for fundraising. And then the next year we came in number 2 in their history. We kept breaking our own records. The problem is, every year the organization was creating a budget, not in relationship to how many donors there are and how much we think we could raise. They were creating a budget based on what they wanted to spend, irregardless of how much they thought they could raise. And so I was breaking records every single year for 8 years. And I kept having meetings with the executive team and the board, and they were disappointed because we weren't meeting our budget. I think that a lot of us are in situations where the amount of money that we're trying to raise and the expectations on us are not connected to what our real capacity for actually connecting with people and raising money are. And if you're in that situation, it might be that it's not so much how do I get out there and meet people and have this transactional fundraising approach. Like, I need to find people and ask them for money. Like, even if I don't know them, I need to start asking for money, and I need to be bringing money in. If you get in that frantic stage because the expectations are really high on your organization, that can really be damaging to your ability to step away without stress and really be thinking about, how do we minister to people, call them in so that they can enjoy working in the kingdom of God and hearing about this cause. Anyway, I think you get the situation. A lot of us are in that situation. We're going to move to the second one here. And really the first 2 are the big ones, and the last 2 we'll hit pretty quickly. But the second one is creating strategy. And I find that this is intuitive to many of us, but it's really important to point out that not all donors are the same, and we have to develop strategies that will reach people. But how do you do that? How do you think about it? And so we're going to spend just a second trying to think about that. And the best way that I've come up with it is, what are some of the typical categories of different donors? And then how do I form a strategy that will reach them? What I find in really successful fundraising is that people identify that a foundation, your mother, and a major donor that is a business leader in your city, they're all very different. When you have a golf tournament or if you have a banquet, those are really different than talking to your monthly donors. So we have all these categories, and we're just going to talk about that with the goal that you can think for a second. Am I considering what categories of donors I want to speak to? Who's my audience? And how do I create a strategy to reach them? So if we move forward here, we could see, I just picked 6. There's hundreds. You could come up with all kinds of categories. I just picked 6. These are the ones that I typically focus on. But if we pick 5 or 6 categories of donors, and we talk about them for just a second here, I think you can see what I'm getting at. Is I think you can develop strategy to reach donors when you identify what is their motivation. What is, you put in, that we say, don't judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. And so we're putting ourselves in the mindset of who the donor is. What is it that might motivate them to be involved with what we're doing? And in many cases, it's nothing. And so we shouldn't waste our time. Like they already have their own organization. They're doing stuff. For some reason, they wouldn't be motivated. But in some cases, it's, oh, I think this could really work. So if you look at let's start from the bottom up. This is sort of silly, but let's start with number 6. I left my town in the United States and moved to the Dominican Republic when I was just out of college. So I was a missionary to the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And when I raised money for that venture, 100% of my donors were my friends and my family. They were college friends, high school friends, and then my family. My mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, they gave to me. And, you know, I think I could have done 20 different things that they would have given money to. And so I think they did care about what I was doing, but they cared more about how I was doing. And so I had a newsletter. I would communicate with them. I would go home. I would have meals. I would sit with my friends. I would tell them what's going on and my adventures. And I involved them in my life. That was probably the most effective thing to keep them engaged and to keep them giving. Some would come and see me, and that would be great. But you can see, you know, I think if I cared about something else, and this is a silly example, but imagine I was really passionate about cats in my city, the stray cats in my city. I'm not sure all of my family and friends would give to that, but I bet a lot of the same donors that cared about me sharing Christ with high school teenagers in the Dominican Republic and in Haiti, they probably would have given if I asked them to care for cats in my city. So you can see there's the motivation of friends and family. When you go to foundations, or let's say you have looking at number 4 here, a foundation or a corporate giver, yes, they want to hear what you're doing, but you have to realize everybody who does anything in nonprofits has communicated with this foundation. So your cause is worthy, but it's not going to stand out with a foundation. I mean, they've heard everything under the sun and they care about all of it. But let's put ourselves in their shoes for a second. What is it that a foundation needs? What is it that they're up against? Well, they're trying to find ways to really invest their money in a good way. They need to have good reporting. They need to know that they can trust that they're going to get a report back. And many times for a foundation, the leaders of a foundation are representing, they're like stewards. They're representing people that they're going to have to go and report to. So the person that's going to give you the grant is going to have to go and tell a superior why they gave to your organization, how it's going to help them. And so knowing that person, if you can, helping them look good, making sure that the foundation is getting the information that they need in order to communicate that their investment was successful, that's what they're going to want. In the case of corporate giving, let's say a company in your city has grants of $5,000 a year to great community causes. What's going to motivate them? Well, the chief things that they need to know is, if I participate with this organization, I'm not going to get in trouble. They're going to keep me safe, because I don't want my business to be in jeopardy because I was trying to be generous with another organization. So what ways are you communicating with that company to know that giving to you is safe, first and foremost, that it's going to help them look good, it's going to achieve their goals of having sort of a good social reputation of being generous? Are you helping that process, not just pitching your organization? So you can see what I'm kind of getting at here is, are you thinking about ways that speak to different levels of donors? Or do you just have a newsletter and you're just blanketing everybody with the same thing? I'm going to show this in a minute, but I have a very specific calendar with ways that I'm going to reach every single level of donor in my organization. And that comes, first of all, from me having the ability to think about what do I think strategically is going to reach those donors. So I think we're going to pause here for a minute and have a breakout. Nina, do you want to give us some instructions?
Thanks, Scott. Yes, so everyone, we've scheduled the breakout room for 15 minutes so that you have a few minutes to introduce yourself to the other leaders in your breakout room. You'll be about 4. So please share a little bit about yourself, your organization, and then Scott can unpack the 2 questions in more detail, but essentially you can prioritize the time as you want, 50-50, or if you just want to dive into one of these questions, but they do really relate nicely to understand what about your organization essentially is drawing people to you so that you can build more relationships and community. So just want to move this pop-up. There you go. So introduce yourself. It is a safe space, but do only share when you are comfortable. Turn on your cameras for great engagement. If you see there's struggling to start engaging, maybe the person who's not English first language, you go for it and you open up the conversation and we get everyone engaging. Great. Scott, back to you.
Thank you.
Do you want to add to that?
I just would say that I think this might be a fun time to hear from peers, just what are things that are attracting people to your organization? How do you take care? How do you encourage that, bring them in, send them down a pipeline of deeper engagement? That's what we all need. So if you're willing to share that, I think it'd be a great blessing to everybody. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that was helpful in some way. I look forward to the question and answers just to get a little bit of conversation and feedback. But let me summarize by telling a story, these first 2 points. I'm the chairman of the board for an organization called Jobs for Life. And that organization has operated for 20 years. And we really got into a mode of only speaking to people that needed work. So we're really helping people that were out of work and trying to figure out how to find work, have jobs, have job skills to get work. But what we've been discovering is one of our secret superpowers is we have a lot to say to business people in the community. Proverbs 11:10 says that when the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. And so Jobs for Life has been discovering that we have a lot to say to business people. We have a lot of ways to encourage business people. So we always thought our audience were just people that were getting out of prison, didn't have jobs, that had very low income. And all of our communication was talking about how we were helping those people and how we would help people get jobs. But what we're finding is everybody thinks about the people that they staff. After you've made a lot of money, how do you participate with people in your community so that you can bring blessings to them? How does somebody that earns different money than the people that work for them, how do they interact in a way that's healthy and helpful? And Jobs for Life is finding this really whole new way to speak to another audience. And by the way, it wasn't a fundraising strategy to begin with. It was just like, this is one of the chief messages of our organization that we didn't even realize we had, because we were kind of thinking of those people as donors. But when we think of them as participants in God's kingdom and we have a message to them, one of the secondary wonderful benefits is that those people have a lot of capacity to give money. And so we found channels and ways to start to draw in business people and communities. And it's really helped the organization in ways that they just never thought. And I'm using that as one illustration. I mean, I understand a lot of organizations are in places where it's, you know, I'd really have a hard time. I coached somebody who was living in Dubai, but their work was in Afghanistan, and most of their donors were in the United States. And I said, man, we really have our work cut out for us, don't we? Because how are you going to create community when your work is in Afghanistan, you live in Dubai, and you're connecting with people in the United States? And I don't have the immediate answer for that. I'm just saying that's the main entrepreneurial challenge that my friend in Dubai had, was you got to figure that out or it's not going to work. But that's the chief problem. It's not that there's lots of just big donors, and that if somebody just introduced you to somebody that has a lot of money, it's going to fund your ministry. That's not how it works. Is we have to build community. All right, so we're going to move into 2 more tips, and then we're going to have a little bit of time for questions. And I'm going to move through these fast because they're really intuitive. You probably do these, so I'm not sharing anything that's rocket science here, but I'm sharing it not because I don't think you are already doing it or aware of this. I'm sharing it to emphasize, if you really lean into these 2 things, it's going to help you. I promise you. So that's why we're going to go fast. But number 3 is you got to calendar everything. In other words, if you had 50 people that you know you need to talk to this year, and look, we know that talking to our donors is not just going one time and asking them for money. It should be a relationship. So let's say that your goal is, for your donors, you have 3, 4, 5 interactions with them this year. Well, do you have a calendar where for 50 people you actually have it planned out? It'll never go this way, but do you actually have a calendar to where it shows what you're going to do throughout the year with 50 people, with 100 people, with 1,000 people? Like, we need to calendar everything, because then we start to go, well, if I want to meet them in May to ask them for funding, I might need to do X, Y, and Z before then, and all that goes on a calendar. With foundations, I currently am chasing 12 foundations. I want to get grants from 12 foundations. So what I have done is I've gone and gotten all the information I can on those 12 foundations. I have learned from them when I need to submit the grant proposals. And in some cases, they say, well, before you can even submit a grant proposal, you need to give us a letter of intent. And so I have a calendar that shows, here's where I need to send my letter of intent. Here's where I need to ask the grant. If I got the grant, here's where I would thank them for the grant. Here's where I would give them a report. And so let me show you and by the way, you can see it doesn't have to be pretty. And I'm going to illustrate that by showing you my own calendar. If I can do that successfully here. All right. So this is actually not our live calendar, but you can see here on my calendar, I just created an Excel sheet. So our organization has a operational calendar, but this is my this is my development and communications calendar. And you can see one column here, I've listed all my categories of donors. So I sort of defined, I mean, obviously I know who my board is. I sort of defined who I think my major donors are. I'm working with ministry partners. We support students. These are the foundations that I'm kind of chasing this year. I have a few people that like to give memorial gifts on behalf of somebody that they love that passed away, and so I have legacy givers, at churches, and so I have these categories of donors, and then I have every month of the year let's see, I have something on my screen. I can't see it. Okay. And then I have every month of the year, and I have it planned out what I'm going to do in that month to reach those donors. And then I have some tabs, which I'm not showing you, that breaks it out even more. So like my major donors, I have a list of all those people and what I want to do for them this year. And I'm showing that to you just because one of the chief things in managing time and achieving goals is the idea that ideas are only dreams until they're actually scheduled. And so if you need to raise $30,000 this month or $5,000 this month, is that on a calendar? You can't guarantee the results of the giving, but you can guarantee that there'll be 30 things that you're going to do to try to raise that $5,000. Is it on a calendar? When things are planned out, it helps us to be cool and calm when everything's crazy. And you know, your fundraising and your support in life in a nonprofit, everything might be on fire, but man, it helps when we're not waking up and going, man, what am I going to do today? I got to get to work. If we get it on a calendar, it helps. So anyway, you get the idea on that one. And then my last point is a tool. I'm not even going to show it to you, but my last point is, can you identify the top 10 things that would change your world if you did them this month? And I think it's healthy every month to try to get the top 10 things you're going to do. The most important tasks, we call them MIT. And if you want a tool, you can go into the 54 class, and on the last section, this is a tool that's listed, and I made one that you can download and you can have it. But what I find is I don't care how much you love fundraising, and I bet if we all raised our hand, who here loves fundraising? There's not going to be a lot of hands. So what I find is that somehow fundraising, like going and asking somebody for money, setting up that meeting, those are the things that always fall to the bottom of your to-do list. And I encourage everybody that's in development, in nonprofits, to have a top 10 list. What are the top 10, and have the skill of each month asking, you know, if I didn't do anything, but I did these 10 things, that's going to change my world. That's going to actually be the most important thing that's going to help me achieve the goals that I have. And then here's the radical thing, and the scary thing is, if you could figure out a way to share that with somebody every month, you're going to have accountability. And look, fundraising can just feel lonely when you're sitting there trying to think of, like, how am I creating friends? And it just helps if you have somebody to share what you're up to and how you did it and why you failed it, why it didn't work. All these kinds of things are very helpful. All right, so we're gonna end there so that we have some time just to talk.
Perhaps as a reminder, we've started out with talking about the true P&L and the fact that the fact that you have to continuously build relationships, and that is an entrepreneurial task. If you currently just have a handful of relationships that of people that are drawn to your organization, it is a tough but exciting and entrepreneurial task to increase or to get more relationships in than we lose. And then when we have that set of relationships, to think, okay, what are these donors' motivations, and how do I therefore communicate with them, and to schedule that to make sure you really speak to their motivations. And then the top 10 list, which is in one of our courses, and I'll share that at the end. But I hope this has given you some time to work up the courage to unmute and ask questions. We've got about 15 minutes to chat. Go first.
Scott, this is your fellow North Carolinian. Thank you for your nice chat text just now. One just observation, and I was thinking about this coming out of our breakout session room, is I think so many nonprofits have a real expertise and they know more about a subject matter than they realize. And as I was listening to some of our other participants, and then your example of your expertise around jobs and employment and those kind of things, I think the more that the nonprofit can position itself as a true subject matter expert, and there is a lot of media that needs content. And so how to distribute that expertise is a separate subject, but I think just seeing themselves or ourselves as a knowledge source, that is a way that I think can attract people to what we're doing, build the community, increase the relationships. And so that's just more a suggestion, I guess, than a question, or maybe the question is, do you agree? And if so, how would you apply that thought, maybe in a better way than I described?
I love that, Larry. What a great emphasis. You know, I listened to a podcast recently where a development specialist is interviewing a woman, Mary Benson in England, and might have to make that available in the course as one of the links to resource. But Larry, just to emphasize your point, she worked in private equity, and then she worked in nonprofit. She was a nonprofit specialist, then she worked in private equity and worked for a foundation, and then she was back in nonprofits. What she learned in those two environments is that nonprofits are often soliciting donors. They're soliciting foundations. What she found in private equity is once you come and solicit, you kind of get categorized as somebody that's trying to raise money. But she also found that in private equity, when they found somebody, they discovered somebody on their own, it was like a whole different kind of category for that organization. It was like, wow, we found this organization that's doing great work. So it's so what Mary Benson is saying is the organizations that really are able to find what they are best in the world at, what a message is that they can really communicate out to the public, and they can be found more often, it's much more powerful for their fundraising than just pitching what their cause is and asking people for money. So it's a great point. I love it. I agree.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. I saw, Sonia, you put up your hand, took it down though. Do you still have a question? All right. Feel free to jump in if you do.
We've got to jump in, Nina.
Great. Thanks. Go for it.
Well, I just want to piggyback on what Scott and Larry said. And this goes back 30 years when I was working in a local nonprofit in Florida, and it was serving the homeless, and it had a place for men and a place for women and children. But what was amazing is when we would do a tour, people would say, "Oh, I never knew you did all this." You know, they only had a concept of providing meals or clothing for the homeless. They didn't have the concept of a residential program where these people actually lived there and couldn't go out into the community until, you know, they were graduates or getting a job or something. But we decided we would just do tours anytime rather than a couple of times a year, because the more we could get people in to see what we did. Now that's hard in an international organization when all your work is overseas. You can't do that. But I just wanted to jump on that concept so that people somehow finding that strategy that's going to give people the knowledge of what your organization really does. Yeah.
So Scott, there's some great questions in the chat. It's building up. So I'm going to ask the first one here from Ian, asking in their breakout room, there was a colleague that shared about her great donor relationships she had. She had so much energy, but he asked, when the donor relationship is very draining, how can we turn it into a life-giving one?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, there's a book called Toxic Charity, and we have a situation with nonprofits that's just a little bit different than a business. If you were a shirt company and you sold shirts to the public and you made your shirt so that it only has one sleeve, the customer would tell you this shirt is terrible. This doesn't work. You would get immediate feedback from your shirt. I mean, from the customer. In our situation, we have what you might think of as the customer, the people that we're helping. And you've got a donor who are also people that hopefully we're helping. And then, but you've got this triangular loop, and it's very confusing, right? And so I don't know exactly how this particular donor is difficult and draining, but I think there's a couple things to look at, which is you probably really need to evaluate, is this donor having influence by the fact that they're giving money? Are they having influence on the integrity for how we're executing our mission? So we don't want our donors to dominate how or what we're doing. But we do want our donors to feel that we love, support, and really appreciate their participation. And so I have compassion for managing that situation. It's just, we're all in very difficult jobs. And so when people are draining, I don't really have a magic bullet for that other than finding a way to create some boundaries of, you know, we're willing to appreciate you, but we're not willing to compromise the integrity of our mission with ideas that you have. It takes
Really
bravery, you know, it takes bravery to not just do whatever, like, let's say you have one donor that gives a majority of your funding in a year. And look, a lot of us are in those situations. I find a lot of organizations got started because the foundation gave half of their budget. In fact, I was involved with an organization that I coached for about 6 months because General Motors in the United States for 30 years gave 60% of their entire budget in one donation every year for 30 years. And guess what? They needed somebody to help them because GM went bankrupt and they didn't have that donation anymore. And what they learned was, you know what, we have really not done any work to figure out how to bring in donors because they were only resting on that one donor. So back to the question, we have to be brave sometimes because it's really scary that you might lose a big donor. But there are circumstances where, you know, you stand up and speak truth into your donor's life and in order to help them. Like, you know, true friends speak to their friends in love. And if somebody's out of line or difficult in a way that's really inappropriate, we might have to do that at the cost of losing that donor.
That's tough. Scott, I'm going to throw in some of the other questions from the chat. It is picking up nicely. So I'm going to combine two. The one is, what is better, to hire a fundraiser or for the leader to do it? And latching onto that, when is a good time to transition from the founder doing the fundraising to finding a full-time fundraiser?
I love this
if you agree to the first.
Yeah, I love this question. This is such a great question. I can't tell you how many organizations I've been helping, and one of the first questions is, our fundraising is terrible. Should I hire a development director? And I'm laughing a little bit because it's a really good question. But I would say that the last thing you want to do is you want to hire a development director if your organization hasn't figured out how to connect to people. You really want to hire a development director when you have too many relationships and you can't manage them all. But a development director is not going to come in and bring in, a development director doesn't bring in 500 relationships for you. development director doesn't come in with magical relationships of people that already love your organization. The development director is just going to give, it's like a church. Here would be an analogy for that. A church having a pastor, and then there's so many people coming into the congregation that they hire an associate pastor to help, would be what I think is the relationship of having a development director. You want a co-director of ministry of some sort to come in and help the director. So I find that if you're having trouble with your fundraising, you might need a development coach. You might need someone to help you come up with strategy to connect with more people, but you probably don't need to hire a development director yet. You need to figure out how your development can actually work.
That was amazing. Thanks, Scott. We have time for one more question. We'll have to keep it tight, but to everyone who's posted, don't worry, we'll have a WhatsApp channel and I'll make sure we get some answers to those questions for you. So keep posting if you have any questions. But we'll end with Pietri, and if you want to jump in yourself, you're more than welcome to. I'll kick you off here. So he's asking about if you're based in a different country, like the example of the gentleman in Dubai, how would you build new relationship and find new people?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. That's not so easily solved. I think that's our principal job, is to be really clever at coming up with that. I hate to say this, it sounds bad, but I don't think the fact that you care for women that have been trafficked, people that don't know the Lord, people that don't have jobs, people that are living on the streets, the fact that you care for those people doesn't make us special. We have a heart for the things that the Lord has the heart for, and there are special things about our organizations. But the donors that we're going to, guess what? They care about all the same things. And they might actually be already engaged in giving to many of those things and running their own efforts at helping those things. What makes us special, what is our superpower, is actually coming up with an answer to the question that was just asked. That's what makes us nonprofit leaders. That's what makes us great and the best in the world at solving the community problems that we have, which isn't just helping people, giving them the things that we supply them with, the ways that we share Christ with them. It's bringing community together to solve that. So I'm not answering the question very well because there's not a great answer. I don't really know how my friend in Dubai serving Afghanis is going to create a community that cares about that particular thing. The sad truth might be, in some cases, he just went and did that without creating a community, and now wants people to support it. And he might be in a bad situation. It's to be determined. We're still learning, but I hope he figures it out. I hope he can find people in Dubai, people in Afghanistan, and I hope he can find a way to bring some of his friends. He's an American, North American. I hope he can find a way to connect with people in his home and bring them, and he can create a community around it. I do find that figuring out ways to meet with people is really important. So if you've got ways to have small groups, have people pray for you, go and meet with people and ask for their advice, like wherever you are, just getting started with figuring out ways to meet people is just really important.
Thanks, Scott. Great, everyone. So we are unfortunately heading towards the end of the session. Time goes by so fast. And it's great to learn together. We're learning from Scott and we're learning from each other. And I want to ask you for the opportunity for us to learn from you. So a poll will be coming up now, right, more or less. And we would really love to learn and hear from you whether it was helpful and to get some feedback so that we can keep on making it better and better. So please, if you have a moment, that would be great. We would really appreciate your feedback. And then another exciting thing to share, we've alluded to it a little bit. I'm going to continue in the background while you respond to the poll. But the goodness doesn't have to end here. We can all join a WhatsApp channel, a WhatsApp chat where you can continue to ask questions and engage with Scott. When I told him about the WhatsApp group, he was so excited. So I can almost guarantee that he will respond to all of your questions. I'm sure that he's excited to engage. So you can just open on WhatsApp that little camera and scan that QR code, and we can continue to learn together. So this is a limited duration WhatsApp group. It's not going to be one of those archived groups in your WhatsApp chat that's just going to get old. We're just going to keep it tight for a month and make the most of the rest of the time together to learn. And then lastly, here we go. Our next event is by Tim Tucker, is a leader from the Message Trust, and he's going to share about how he has built his their organization's brand. And then if you want to learn more and you haven't done the courses that Scott has shared on today, the specific courses that relates to this topic that he discussed is Listen to Your Donors, under the topic of strategies for fundraising, and tools for donors. So this tools for donors one is the one that has got that top 10 listing. And this one speaks to donor motivations. So you can continue to learn and engage on the platform as well. But all in all, I really pray and hope that this has been so helpful for you and that you feel encouraged and motivated and equipped to build a great community and relationships that will make your fundraising journey more life-giving. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. If you haven't responded to the poll, please do so. And then a massive thank you, Scott, for your time and for sharing your thoughts and being so open and generous with your experience. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure all of the leaders also do.